Ulysses S. Grant and his wife Julia wait for news from the Republican National Convention being held in Chicago. The former two-term president was hoping to secure the nomination, but the party was split over his viability as a candidate.
There are others who have this concern of what they call Caesarism, that Grant is going to stay in office forever and ever, because while there's precedent, there's no law that says he can't remain in office as long as people keep voting him in. So they worry that he's going to become a kind of an American Caesar, this great warrior who then takes control of the political realm of the republic.
By this point in time, the Republicans had divided into two factions, one which was known as the Stalwarts, and these were folks that were sort of in the pro-Grant side of things that were relatively comfortable with this idea of patronage and party machines. The other faction was known as the half-breeds, and these were people who were really interested in kind of banishing all of this apparatus. Grant's two main competitors for this 1880 nomination, at least going into the convention, were James G. Blaine, who was a politician from Maine, and also John Sherman, who was a politician from Ohio. He was also, incidentally, the brother of William T. Sherman, who, of course, had been Grant's right-hand man during the Civil War.
None of the three main candidates are at the convention. Grant is in Galena, Illinois at his home, which is not very far from Chicago. And then Blaine and Sherman are both in Washington, D.C. Grant was a little put off by putting a telegraph line in his home for this, but a neighbor had a telegraph line in their home, so he spent all of his time going back and forth between his house and his neighbor's house.
After hours of waiting, Grant finally receives the results from the first round of balloting. Surprisingly, none of the candidates received the 379 votes required to secure the nomination.
And throughout this first day, there are over 20 rounds of votes, and Grant never gets more than about 307 votes. So he never really increases more than 3. What happens is some of these people who received 15 votes, 10 votes, 5 votes, start giving their votes to either Blaine or Sherman. But there's still not enough votes for either the two of them.
Julia recognizes her husband's chances of losing the nomination. The day before, she had encouraged Ulysses to travel to Chicago and appear on the convention floor, but he refused.
On the third round of voting, a new name appeared, and that was James Garfield, who was a politician from Ohio.
Curiously, the number of people voting for Garfield starts to go up. And after about another 10 or 12 rounds of voting, Garfield has now overtaken Grant.
By the 36th round of voting, James Garfield ends up with 399 votes. So he really becomes this accidental candidate.
News of Garfield's nomination finally reaches Galena. After reading the final vote count from a telegram, Grant turns to a reporter and asserts,
"It is all right. I am satisfied."
Grant tells his son and tells many people in private that he's glad that he didn't have to get it because he feels tired. He says he's tired of the scrutiny that comes from the press. He's tired of the arguments and the scandals and all of those things that come with being president. But many of the people who he knew and trusted wanted him to be president, so he was going to take the job on.
I think that this kind of underscores that these conventions were, in some ways, a little more exciting in the late 19th century than they are today, because you have that element of uncertainty, that element of surprise.
The 1880 convention is a really interesting thing. It's about personalities, it's about politics, it's about high-level conceptions of republicanism and liberty and freedom, and it's also about the personalities of men who just hate one another and who grate on each other's nerves and who would never support this guy because they just don't like him or don't trust him.